How are you doing today? Hopefully you're doing good. I'm doing good here, making a video for all you guys and girls out there. And this is about the Japanese island that is being turned into as an unsinkable ship. Unsinkable ship for the U.S. United States Air Force. Yes, we are allies with Japan, and that's a vital area in the world that, the U.S. needs to be involved in because, we have China over there, the CCP, and the CCP likes to try to bully other smaller, Southeast Asian nations. Basically all of them, yeah, they like to bully all of them. So, thank goodness for the Japanese because they're creating this island for an Air Force base, and we're going to check this video out. We're going to see what it's all about. We're going to see what we can learn, and let's do this.
Japan transforms $146 million island into unsinkable U.S. aircraft carrier.
$146 million from the Japanese, and we greatly appreciate it. Yes, we do.
Square miles of volcanic rock on the edge of the East China Sea may one day be used as an unsinkable aircraft carrier for the United States Navy. In the event of war in Asia, Japan's government announced this week that it's buying Magashima Island, an uninhabited outcrop 21 miles 34 kilometers from the southernmost Japanese main island of Kyushu.
So who did they buy it off of? Did they buy it off themselves? That wasn't really clear to me. Maybe you guys can fill me in on that. But that's a lot of dough, but for a very important reason.
The island, most of which is owned by a privately held Tokyo development company,
that answers the question right there. A Tokyo company owned it.
Is uninhabited and hosts two intersecting unpaved runways that were abandoned under a previous development project. The Japanese government said the runways will be paved and used for U.S. Navy and Marine Corps planes to simulate aircraft carrier landings, though it did not give a time frame in which that could be accomplished as the deal still needs to be finalized. But once suitable facilities are constructed, the island could also become a permanent base for Japan's self-defense forces.
CCP, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when we put a base there for you?
As Tokyo looks to strengthen its position along the East China Sea, where it faces competing claims from China over the Japanese-administered Senkaku Islands, known as the Diaoyu Islands in Chinese, the purchase of Magashima Island is extremely important, and serves for strengthening deterrence by the Japan-US alliance as well as Japan's defense capability. U.S. military officials in Japan said they could not comment on the purchase. Buying Magashima has been the subject of talks for years. Tsuuten Airport, the company that owns most of the island, finally reached agreement with the government in late November. The island was identified as a suitable site for use by the U.S. as a permanent base for field carrier landing practice under a 2011 agreement outlining the realignment of U.S. forces in Japan.
Do you know how much happiness that brings to my heart? That's just a vital area of the world. Vital area of the world that we need to be in because there's a lot of things happening on that side of the world. And Japan, they're a real close ally to the United States. And we're allied to a lot of people over there in these nations. And we definitely need to be there, because those counterfeit CCP dudes, they're building military bases in unauthorized islands, I might add, in the Spratly Islands, that they have no rights to. So, you know what? At least the United States is doing it the right way. And Japan is saying, hey, we got this island. The government, hey, we're going to buy this. Hey, you can use it. So, you see the difference? The Chinese, the CCP, they steal land, just like they steal technology, just like they steal everything. They're counterfeit. We need to add another C to the CCP. It needs to be the CCCP, Counterfeit Communist Party, because that's what they are.
The $146 million deal also comes as the U.S. military is hearing calls to increase the number of its strategic bases in East Asia, in the face of a growing Chinese missile arsenal. The majority of U.S. combat air forces in Japan are concentrated in just 6 bases. Recent studies, including one from the United States Study Center at the University of Sydney published in August, say with their current resources the U.S. forces would be vulnerable to Chinese missile strikes early in any conflict.
That ain't
One
good.
way to mitigate that is to spread U.S. troops and assets out among more bases. U.S. military aircraft conduct an Elephant Walk exercise at Kadena Air Base on Okinawa in 2017. Experts fear U.S. forces in Japan are concentrated on too few bases. Over time, the diversification of Japanese and American bases, individual or joint, will be a trend, said.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to give them any advantage because we all know the Chinese really, they haven't really been in any wars, They haven't really had to fight anybody. The Chinese do it more of a counterfeit way with economics, They push big loans up on these countries and the countries can't pay them back. Then the Chinese, the Communist Party, they, take assets, companies, stuff like that, technology, A military conflict's a little bit different. I'm not saying I want to go into a military conflict. I don't. But if it requires it, every advantage is a good advantage. You know what I'm saying? So, I have all thoughts on our, the United States military dominating the Chinese. Because they just have a counterfeit mindset. They have a communist mindset, and communism never wins, does it? It may be there a while, but it doesn't win. We won't let it.
Corey Wallace, an Asia security analyst at Frey University in Berlin. The alliance would be more resilient if bases and hardware were more dispersed. The theory goes the more bases you have, the more missiles an adversary would need to fire to overwhelm its target and gain an advantage in a combat scenario. Permanent land bases are considered more valuable than aircraft carriers because they can withstand a great number of munitions. In theory, a carrier can be taken out with a single missile or torpedo.
Right.
Battle damage to land bases can also be repaired much more quickly than a complex war machine like an aircraft carrier. The new base is also a good sign for U.S.-Japan defense cooperation, which has seen strains in recent years on 2 fronts. Localities have put pressure on the Japanese government to move U.S. military activity away from population centers. And U.S. President Donald...
Man, I agree with that. You don't want military bases real close to the population because that gives, whoever the enemy may be, let's just throw one out there, like the CCP, it'll give them, like, a pathway to, oops, we shot it at the military base, but it hit the civilians, and we don't want that. I agree with that 110%.
Trump has pushed allies like Japan to take some financial load off U.S. taxpayers. On the former point, Wallace says Magashima could eventually see operations from U.S. Marine Corps Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, taking some of the load off current airfields on the main islands in Okinawa. Just last February, Okinawa residents, in a non-binding referendum, voted overwhelmingly that the U.S. Marine Corps' Futenma Air Station be relocated off the island. That vote came after incidents of parts falling off U.S. aircraft and landing outside the base.
Right.
Including near schools and numerous flashpoints involving U.S. defense personnel and local
I agree with
residents.
that. 100.
Despite that vote, the Japanese government moved ahead with plans to relocate Futenma operations elsewhere on Okinawa. Similarly, the government could be expected to push back against any challenges to the Magashima plan from the nearest island of Tagashima 8.5 miles 14 kilometers to its east and from where it is administered. A U.S. Navy carrier-based E-2D Hawkeye airborne radar plane and 4 U.S. Marine Corps F-35B Lightning jets fly over the South China Sea. In the larger international picture, Japan is making the right move to keep its most important ally, the United States, happy.
Yes!
Trump is asking Japan to pay more.
Yes.
This purchase of the island is a move that is part of the whole plan to demonstrate that Japan is willing to shoulder more burden. And despite the island's proximity to Tagashima, no one actually lives on it, allowing the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe government to try to balance between its obligation towards the alliance as well as to its domestic constituents.
And that's good. Give and take. You spend some money, because we've been spending all this money. We spend so much money on the military. And yeah, well, we're going to give too. We're going to move the base here. We're still going to be there. Our presence is still going to be known. But, you know, we got to balance both sides. And I 100% agree with that. You got to keep people safe. And you got to keep people, you know, the bad guys, whoever that may be, CCP, you got to keep them sweating. Got to keep them sweating.
As a practice field, Magashima will also be more convenient for U.S. carrier pilots, many of which now fly out of Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni on the Japanese main island of Honshu. The flyers now practice carrier landings, known as touch-and-go landings, on Iwo Jima, also known as Iwo to almost 850 miles 1,360 kilometers away. Flying to Magashima would cut the journey by 600 miles 960 kilometers.
That's good.
Down the line, Wallace says Magashima could provide for some new cooperation between the US and Japanese militaries, specifically involving F-35 stealth fighters. Japan has announced it will be upgrading its Izumo-class helicopter destroyers to handle US-made F-35B jets.
Upgrade those babies.
Fighters that now fly off American amphibious assault ships, essentially small aircraft carriers. It's also purchasing dozens of the short takeoff, vertical landing jets. Japan does not have pilots with any experience landing fixed-wing aircraft on carriers.
Train,
However,
baby.
this new facility might offer the opportunity over time for Japanese to gain some familiarity with such operations
Absolutely.
alongside the US.
Train.
Not only to utilize their own carriers, but for cross-decking, sharing with the United States. Having Japanese F-35s on American naval vessels would be quite a signal.
And that's all that video. What do you guys think? I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that the Japanese government, you know, was like, look, we're willing to give a little, and you're willing to give a little. Let's do this. So they're spending all these millions of dollars on this island, and you know, the area a little bit more safer. You know, it keeps, you know, certain parties like the Communist Party from pushing in as fast. You know. Gives them a little warning. Do we want World War III of China? No, we don't. Will it happen? It could happen. There's a big likelihood it really could happen. So you gotta have those bases there, and hopefully we put more bases, and hopefully we can get rid of the bases that aren't supposed to be there. You know, CCP, the ones that you are building up on reefs, destroying nature. That's not good. That's never a good thing. Shame on you. But we all know the CCP could give a damn about nature. You know, you see how polluted China is. But anyway, enough of that. What's your thoughts? What do you feel about this situation? Comment down below. Let me know. And I'll see you next time. Peace.